Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, Twitch chat. Welcome back to Let Us Play. I'm your host, Father Evan. It's good to be with you all today. Good to see you, Bad Rocks. Good to see you, Brayherd. Good to see you, Quackspot. Good to see you, Beer Fox. Good to see you, Gale. And happy birthday, Gale, by the way. Who is on a 30 stream streak. My goodness. And Bad Rocks, congratulations. You've won the crown of Firstendom, the crown of being comfy and cozy in pajamas. And Love, good to see you. Yeah, mushrooms are not a vegetable, nor are they a fruit. They do have fruiting bodies, but they're not a fruit. They are an affront to nature. We've established that. I've established that. I hold that. The start of my Summa Theologica. I hold that. Mushrooms are an affront to nature. Anyway, fruit mammals. That's a terrible... Are other fungi? For the most part, yes. There are some that are allowed to exist. But anyway. Good to see you, Kit. I'm not acknowledging the pun. Anyway, welcome back. Yeah, today, Cozy Games, because more humongous entertainment. So let's go ahead. Let's get on into it. I tweaked more with the CRT filter, so let me know what you think.
Not so fast, evildoer. It's jail for you, you tasty villain. You and your chocolate chip gang are through. Boy, eating cookies is hard work. But there's only one more box to go,
Pajama Sam
and
gets
I'll
sent
have
to fat
20
camp.
box tops. And that means I can get the Pajama Man action figure with Titanic elbow thrust. I can hardly wait.
Sam! It's almost time for dinner.
Dinner? Oh boy, I don't feel so good. Uh-oh, I don't think that was me. Hey!
Cookie violence! It's the cookie uprising!
Boy, first they spoil my dinner and now they've gone to cause trouble somewhere else. Somebody's gotta stop them. Somebody like... Pajama Sam!
Your dinner was already ruined.
Of course, I'll need my cape.
It begins.
Nothing behind here.
How would your cape get behind a mirror? Actual trumpet lilies, it's so true.
I don't see it back here. Nothing in here.
You're having a, well, we'll wrap this up in the new year kind of a week at work. I mean, it is fortunate that it's basically that time of year anyway, but also that's rough.
Aha!
Yeah, oofed up but vibes.
All right, cookies. Your dinner spoiling days are over. Pajama Sam is on his way.
You ready to learn about an outdated food pyramid?
The pantry, of course.
That's a huge pantry.
Hello? Is somebody there?
Nobody here but us potatoes.
All right,
All
cookies.
food pyramids are outdated. Well,
I
isn't there
know
the new
you're
one that's like
in
slices of a pyramid? Anyway, this one's especially outdated.
Hey, that tickle! Stop that! Where are you taking me? What?
You already cheat from your head to your feet. There are so many jokes.
Whoa! Oh boy! A party!
I can replace with my plate in 2011. What's my plate? Also, what's Sam?
party for me? I think you spelled my name wrong.
How's that?
How many of these games were made?
On the
A
sign,
lot.
Sam should
There's
only
like
have one S.
4 Pajama
Oh,
Sams,
that?
5
Oh, that's
Freddy Fishes, 5 Putt
SSAM.
Putts.
It stands for Snacks and Sweets Aggressive Majority.
Oh,
How dare you graduate high school before my plate was revealed, so you had no place to learn about it. I'm old. I guess that's how I know. Also, good to see you, Ariam. Good to see you, Hope. Is it weird for a
This
bunch
is
of
a
partying
great
food
party.
to have food on the table to be eaten?
this looks like a job for Pajama Sam.
Boy, just
Oh, I can't believe I ate the whole thing.
You ate it, Sam.
there's a lot going on, and I want to leave.
Well, thanks everyone. This is a great party, but I think I should be going now. It's almost my dinner time, and I wouldn't want to spoil it. My mom made all that broccoli? Turtle!
What?
Yeah!
Jail!
Jail!
You can just wait here in jail until your trial next month, healthy boy.
Whoa, what's that
Next
voice?
month? But it's almost time for dinner.
Tell it to the fudge. Now, if you'll excuse me,
The
I've got to get back to the
fudge!
party. Tra-la-la-la-la.
I can't stay in here a whole month. I've got to get out of here.
But Roxy, it's okay because the hero wants to eat broccoli, but there's broccoli that. Oh, this is the weirdest of the games yet, and that's saying something. Also, good to see you, Squirrel. We are in.
Oh boy, a box top! If I can find 20 of these, I can get a Pajama Man action figure with Titanic elbow thrust.
Hua! If I just ignore the broccoli, it can't hurt me.
Hey, bonbons! I like those.
Why?
Boy, that's quite a lock.
Sending you to jail for 6 months. Yeah, for saying
My
broccoli.
name's Sam.
I'm Florette. Are you a political prisoner too?
I don't know. I think I'm in here because I said I didn't want to spoil my dinner.
The sweets
Are you
don't
a
always get
political prisoner?
along
That's
well
a
with the other
very
foods.
heavy concept
I'm
you're giving
not a
to
food.
children at age of 8 the most. Florette is a good name.
That key will open the cell door. Yes! My arms aren't long enough.
The jail cell is made of candy canes. Just take a bite.
Hey, I think this is... Oops. Gee, I didn't
You're
mean
right,
to
this is
break
not the
anything.
first Pajama Sam
maybe
game
this'll
that's
come in
cast
handy.
vegetables as revolutionaries and political prisoners. Which is a weird sentence to say.
I got the key! I think maybe I deserve a reward.
Just a little treat. Florette just has a 1,000-yard stare. 2 nickels! Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice.
Sam, you did it! Quick, let's get out of here before they come back.
Okay, let's go.
I mean, he ate an entire slice of cake that was like 6 feet tall.
Sweet troops. We'd better not let them see us.
This
I've
game
got
is
to
not
get to the
real.
food pyramid as quickly as possible. I'm supposed to be at the peace conference with the other delegates. Thank you so much for getting us out of there, Sam. You're a real hero. See you later.
Gee. Those troops shouldn't bother me. After all, there's no blue food, right? But I'm not taking any chances.
No, I want the...
Oh, good, another box top.
Well, surely we should head to the peace conference too. That seems the sanest place to be.
Wow, what a neat building.
Why is there a brain cell? Why is the bread a toaster? Chad, I'm losing. I think I'm losing my
No,
connection to
General,
reality.
no!
It's the communist carrot! The communist carrot is back! Delegates. Another word you would expect 4 to 8-year-olds to know. I know, this one seems like especially overwritten. He's a vegetarian. It's a guy. I don't know, but we're following a communist carrot.
Oh. Hi, Carrot.
This doesn't look like a peace
Sam,
conference.
Boy, am I glad to see you. The island of Mop Top is in big trouble.
Mop Top?
Yeah, Mop Top. Here's what's going down. The folks who live on Mop Top are all foods, right? The Fats and Sweets group is taking over. There's just so many of them. They're causing problems all over the island. General Beatfoot wants to declare war on them.
That doesn't sound very good.
You got that right. So, I've organized a peace conference. One member of each of the 6 food groups has been chosen as a delegate, and they're supposed to all get together here at the pyramid to talk out their differences.
I think Florette said something about that before.
Right. She's one of the delegates at the conference. Trouble is, only 2 are here, and there are supposed to be 6. That's bad news.
That's not a
We need
quorum.
everybody, or the conference is off.
What? The conference is off? All right, that's it. This means war!
No, General, no. The conference is still on.
Are we inside Sam's body? The map does seem to
This is a
suggest
map
that.
of the island of Mop Top.
Of course
try
it
not
is,
to think too
soldier.
much.
Wouldn't be very useful otherwise.
I suppose not.
Cheese and crackers! Why are there so many references to Pajama Sam 1?
Oh, one more thing, Sam. I've got to stay here and keep the general from declaring war. So somebody needs to find the other 4 delegates and get them here. They must have run into trouble, or they'd be here by now.
I can find them for you. Pajama Sam always helps those in need. But how will I recognize them?
That part is easy. They'll all be wearing straw hats. Florette and Luke Wigglebig are here. The delegates still missing are Chuck Cheddar, Bean 47, Granny Smythe, and Pierre Lapin.
What's this?
So they bypassed
bypassed through the headlands.
representing just have like a
War, I
slab
tell
of meat as a
you.
delegate,
No,
which I
General,
appreciate.
wait.
But
Boy, I better find those delegates and get them here as fast as I can.
what's with the Mad General? I guess as good as my what? Sam, calm down. Little intrigue in my children's game. Metaphors for the Cold War well after the Cold War has ended.
Hi, I'm Sam. You're the librarian, right?
Yes, that's right.
What are these?
Those are library cards. If you could bring me a picture of yourself, I'll put it on the card and you'll be able to borrow books from the library.
Neat.
Well, we found an objective. I don't know why. That looks like a lot.
All right, a box top.
We've had distrust of the former Soviet Union.
Hi, Florette. I
Sweden.
guess this must be the peace conference, right?
Yes, that's right. It's nice to see you again, Sam.
Ah, gee.
The elevator is a teacup. Yeah, so yeah, if these these we're in Sam's brain right now. Giant donut.
Hey, a big donut! And it's a swing! Whee! Whee!
It's alive.
Hi,
The brain's where the
I'm
donut is stored.
Sprinkles. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were... I should have asked.
That's okay, I love to swing. What else would I be doing tied to a tree like this?
That's a good point.
Maybe playing Pajama Sam was a mistake.
All right, a box top.
I don't think they intended it to be dark. I think they just... It was poorly written.
Hi, how are you today?
Oh, we're good.
We're guards.
Yeah, we're guarding the entrance.
This entrance right here. We're guarding it.
I see. Here's another box top.
Yeah, carrots are good for your eyes, says the British propaganda.
Can I go inside?
Well, let's see.
It's no guards allowed.
No, that's not right. It's guards only.
Gourds only, that's
The
right.
gourds are guarding it?
And, well, he's not a gourd, so...
Game is
So
driving me
that
out of my
would
gourd.
mean-
And that would mean no, you can't go in. No admittance,
Unless you're a guard.
which you're not.
A guard.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sam is just nonplussed. Okay, so we can go back that way. We can go to the heart. Go to the condiment island.
What a cool looking tree. I think there's ketchup growing on it. And some other stuff too. I don't think I can get over there. It looks like it's too far for me to swim.
Don't tell me Otto's going to make an appearance.
Looks like I'd have to get all wet to go that way.
Otto's making an appearance. Is this the teeth?
Excuse me, could you let me through? Hi, I'm Pajama Sam.
Can't talk now. Digging.
You don't need to brush your teeth. You just need to have a whistle so all the candy stops eating at your teeth.
time! Yay!
That's how plaque
Wow.
works.
Here's another box top. I hope I can find 20.
I'm terrified to hear what this sounds like.
I'm Sam.
I am called Syllabus, the Sage. For reasons I cannot fathom,
Fathom?
I sit here atop Mount Wisdom and ponder the deeper mysteries of the universe.
What are you pondering right now?
I'm wondering how gravity works. I mean, I can see that it does work, but how?
That's a heavy question.
Very funny.
Wow, that horn is really big.
Yes, it's called the Horn of Celebration. I like to blow it when I find the answer to a question I'm pondering.
What happens when you blow it?
Try it and see.
That was fun.
Are we supposed to
Not
cause
so
an avalanche
loud
there?
next time.
I sure like your horn of celebration.
Thank you.
Can I blow it again?
Help yourself.
Yeah, we're supposed to cause an avalanche there at some
That's
point.
loud.
Tone it down a bit next time.
And maybe tune it? I
Hey,
don't
a
know.
gondola. I wonder where it goes.
It's the Cheeseman.
Hello.
Howdy.
You're wearing a straw hat. Are you one of the delegates to the peace conference?
That's right. I'm Chuck Cheddar, Cheese of Adventure! I'm on my way to the conference, but my balloon got stuck here in this blasted cotton candy cloud. There didn't used to be so many of them around.
I'm Pajama Sam. Can I give you a lift?
I can't leave the balloon behind, but there is something you can do for me.
Pajama Sam always helps those in need.
Well, that's me. You see, I need to add some weight to the balloon, so it'll be heavy enough to get unstuck and float down.
Why don't I climb aboard?
No. It's got to be just the right amount of weight, you see? Or I'll go down too fast and crash.
Oh, well, how much weight do you need?
That's the problem. I'm not sure. I'll need 10 pounds of sand altogether. But there's already one sandbag hanging under the balloon, and I can't see how much weight is in it. Can you see it from there?
No, but don't worry. I'll think of something.
I
How
know
am I
you
supposed
a
to see
big
the
one.
weight of something?
Oh
Candy
boy,
spin.
I'm gonna go skiing.
Seems appropriate at this time. There's the interact button. Kevin the Reader, your candy spin is... seasonally appropriate. Okay, I'm gonna do a thing. Because one of these is candy cane. And it always just, like, ruins the flavors of everything else. So I'm gonna do everything but candy cane, and then I'll do a candy cane. So I think this will enable more suffering? Question mark? Because, as a reminder, it's cranberry, hot chocolate, eggnog, and pumpkin pie. Oh. Those are not meant to be eaten at the same
Here
time.
I go! Woo! Whoop. Yay! Whoop.
I don't know what the shapes and colors means.
Yay! Whoa!
How old do you have to be to ski? Depends on who you ask, guess. Oh, wait, we're back here.
I like skiing a lot.
Well, that's good, because we have to do it again.
Oh,
Truly, this is the peak of gameplay.
whoop.
Oh, and the candy cane just tastes like toothpaste.
Woo! Yay! Woo! I like skiing a lot.
What do you mean? I followed all the blue. I wound up at the same spot. Just bring all the things back. No. Okay, let's talk to the donut.
What else do you like to do besides swing, Sprinkle?
I used to like to swim quite a bit. Well, float, really. I'm a good floater.
Okay, so that's how we float.
Whoop! Oh my! It's a good thing I can float. Say, the water is very nice today.
Boy, I bet all kinds of things grow on trees that I never even thought about. I'd like to get a close look at that tree, but I'll have to find a way to cross the river.
Why don't you come in for a swim, Sam? The water's lovely.
I don't want to get too wet before dinner, but maybe you could give me a ride.
Sure, hop on.
I can't wait to find out how mayonnaise grows on a tree.
Boy, this is great. Look at all these different sauces.
Yes, it's a condiment tree.
Oh boy, ketchup. Ketchup is good on everything. This is
Mayonnaise.
mayonnaise. Mom puts it in deviled eggs. Yum. I'll take this mayonnaise. It could come in handy.
Can we just take everything?
Hot sauce. I'll take this hot sauce in case I need it. I'll put this other one back.
Okay, you
I
can
don't
only
wanna
take
be
one
greedy.
condiment at a time. So we clearly have soy sauce, ketchup,
Barbecue.
barbecue, mustard.
This. Ew. This is relish.
Oh, okay, pickle
Ew,
relish.
horseradish.
Horseradish is great.
This one's vinegar. It's... All right, a box top. Hello?
Hello, French fry.
I'm not a French fry. I'm Pajama Sam.
Oh, so you are.
Pity. Do you like French fries?
I love French fries, especially with mayonnaise. Mayonnaise.
You're so
It's very
Belgian.
European. That's the only way I'll eat them, actually, is with mayo on them. Then there's no stopping me.
I like mine with ketchup.
Well, different strokes for different folks.
I'd don't know what that is, but it looks kind of gross.
I mean, mayonnaise on French fries is legitimately really good. Like, especially like an actual good mayonnaise.
This one's vinegar. This is me. I'll take this mayonnaise. It could come in handy. I'll put this other one back. I don't want to be greedy.
Doesn't want to be greedy. Eats a giant slice of cake.
Hey, what is that? Is it mayo?
Uh-huh.
Oh, boy!
Why does this egg want to devour French fries? What's...
Well, so much for not getting wet.
I thought that was fun.
Honey jalapeno hummus? That sounds great.
Shall we?
Let's shall.
Shall we? Let's shall. Don't think English works that way.
Ooh, it's creepy in here.
It sure is. Let's not stick around too long.
Okay.
What's all this buildup on the walls? Guess your weight. Okay, well,
Excuse me. Why are you wearing a bag on your head?
Huh? What?
I can't hear you over the
I was
bag.
hiding out from the sweet troops, man. Are they gone?
I don't see anybody.
Great! Thanks for waking me up, bruh. I'm Zach Zook.
I'm Pajama Sam.
Hey, that's cool. Say, Pajama Sam, what are you? About 42 pounds?
I don't know.
Zach Zook is never wrong about these things, my man. You weigh 42 pounds.
Okay. Do you think I could use your bag?
Somebody after you? Sure, take it, bro. I don't need it anymore.
I just needed to collect some sand that you need to weigh.
All right, a box top.
Hey, Trekkie.
Hi, I'm
Hello,
Pajama
Baguette.
Sam. Are you one of the delegates for the peace conference?
But yes, I am Pierre Lepin of the Breads and Grains Group.
Can you get down from there?
Alas, no,
course
I
he's
am
French.
trapped. The Ferris wheel, she has no power. The exercise machine on the beach furnishes the power, but no one seems to be exercising, and so she does not move.
So we have to go exercise on the beach. Got it.
Well, I'll think of something.
Thank you.
I have a
For
feeling
the peace
Sam's
conference
not
to
going
be
to exercise, but
deprived of
trick someone
Pierre?
to the...
This is not good.
Ada, I'm here.
All right, a box top.
How you doing, Cheezel? It's good to see ya. It's the muscles. It's a muscle beach.
Hey, the sand is kind of heavy.
You're sick and tired, but Christmas is not. Oh no! Well, I hope you are
Another
feeling better by
box top.
Christmas. Muscle muffins? That's a sentence.
Well, that's one scoop in the bag. That's
I'm gonna say 4 scoops is 10 pounds. I think it's just
I
full.
have
Okay.
4 scoops in the bag.
So that's not too bad,
Sand is
but
heavy.
it's still sick.
Boy, you guys look healthy.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be working out or something?
Not now, dude.
They're busy. We have to draw those cupcakes for our art class.
What art class?
Do you guys like to work out?
Oh, yeah.
Working out is almost as important to us as our drawing assignment.
But not quite.
We've got to draw those cupcakes so we can be famous artists someday.
I see.
I'm glad you have a career change
This
in mind.
exercise machine is connected to the Ferris wheel.
Yep, that's right, little dude. When we work out, it makes the wheel go around.
About working 26th, 28th, 29th. Ugh. Yeah, let's hope.
Hi, what's up?
Oh, you know. We're just baking, you know.
Was this dude before or after the... Yeah, he was here. Why do the male cupcakes have mouths on tops, but the female... you are asking entirely... First of all, you're asking
Pajama
questions.
Sam, 46 pounds. Spill your brain, brah.
The first time you said I weighed 42 pounds.
4 pounds is massively easy to spot. You must be carrying something heavy. Zach Zook is never wrong about these things.
Okay, so a scoop is a pound, so we need 6 more scoops.
Five scoops. There are 6. I have 7. Now I have 8. There are...
Which means Sam is, like, really good at scooping
I
up
now have
sand consistently.
Sand is heavy.
Let's go check out the bones. It's...
Haha. But
It's the
seriously,
funny
folks,
bone.
let me ask you this. What goes ha 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 ha, plop plop plop? An orange holding its breath.
Hey! You ain't funny!
Oh, is the cape the source of his powers? It's, okay.
Don't you get it? Orange, breath, plop plop plop.
Plop this, wise guy!
It's true. He really isn't very funny.
But hey, tell me, what do you think of these shoes, eh? Thank you, thank you. All right, next up is Tom Rutabaga, the Knock Knock King.
How about a nice hand for Mickey Hollandaise, folks?
Why is a banana named Hollandaise?
Mickey Hollandaise in his great big floppy shoes.
His arms, his
All
hair.
right,
Again,
folks, check this out. It'll knock you right out of your seats. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Omelet.
I don't have
Omelet.
control over the game
I'm
again
a lot
yet.
funnier than Mickey Hollandaise is. You like that, huh?
Okay.
Okay, how about the knock, knock?
Who's there?
Police.
And Trekkie has redeemed a father joke. So Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper, right? Dr. Pepper. Very popular. I don't know if I can trust Dr. Pepper, though. I don't think he's a licensed physician.
Yeah, I got 1 million of them. Knock, knock.
Who's
Isabel.
Isabel who?
It's a gourd.
Is it alright if I take your pumpkin?
Sure, kid. Knock yourself out.
Thanks.
Hey, you're depressed. Can I take your garbage?
Ah, another box top. Hi, I saw your act.
Tell me the truth. Did I stink?
Well,
Yes.
I knew it. Oh, I am awful.
no, I wouldn't say that.
I would say that. Leaves.
I can tell you're a discerning audience. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Oh, wait. That's not where I wanted to go. Say he was very appealing.
Hi, do you sell balloons?
Give the boy a college scholarship. He's a genius.
Okay, what? Oh, please, squirrel, thank you. That would actually be very refreshing and saving my brain from this.
I wish the bell wasn't so high up.
Sam just steals the ballot.
Please pose for your picture.
Oh, hey, we need a...
You're allowed 1 photo per customer.
It sure got the hair right.
I would hope so. It's a photo. How is James 4:11:12 reconciled with Matthew 7:1-5 and not fall into the trap of just do whatever you want? James 4:11-12. Brothers do not choose to slander one another. Whoever slanders his brother or whoever judges his brother slanders the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is one lawgiver and one judge. He is able to destroy and he is able to set free. Okay. Big fan of James. Hey, nice. It's a good one. He's just sitting up there at first. Well, it's not powered because no one on the beach is exercising to power the machine. Perfectly prominent problems. Matthew 7:1-5. Do not judge so that you may not be judged. For whatever judgment you judge, so shall you be judged. And with whatever measure you measure out, so shall be measured back to you. And how can you see the splinter in your brother's eye and not see the board in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the splinter from your eye, while behold, a board is in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the board from your own eye, and then you will see clearly enough to remove the splinter from your brother's eye. I don't... They both are saying don't judge, so I don't know, like, specifically what you... Matthew gives a little more discretion than James, you feel. Just curious about the discrepancy. Oh, okay, so, like, Jesus saying, like, if you do this... I think actually the Matthew passage is Jesus using... Like, I think it is him teaching don't judge, but it's him using humor, so I think he's using this humorous image of having a board, like something incredibly obvious sticking out of your own eye, and being like, why are you trying to do this? You know? And I think ultimately what it leads to is that when we have found greater maturity, both spiritual and emotional, we can help provide others to help them grow away from something. I think specifically the sense of, you know, taking the speck out of someone's eye, we can view that in some ways as like helping to remove the obstacle in their heart. So it's not necessarily quite the same thing as judging, though, because judging is just like, oh, this person. Whereas what Jesus is inviting us to is A, don't judge, and B, after you have attained some level of greater maturity and healing and spiritual growth in this, then you are more able to help others. But you can't help others until you have done that first. So pay attention to doing that first. For the same way you judge others, you will be judged. Versus when you judge the law, you are not keeping it, sitting in judgment on it. Oh, okay. I mean, Jesus is giving a warning. They're both giving warnings in their own way. And I do not see them as being in conflict with each other at all. They're just different ways of saying essentially the same thing. Because if you are judging the law, you're not keeping it, then you are going to be judged for that, which is to be judged by the same manner in which you are judging. Like when Jesus is saying, when you judge others, you will be judged, is a very strong warning. Hey, take care, Bird Fox. So to me, I read those and see them very much as...
Come on, Sprinkle, let's go.
Honestly, in a very great resonance with each other.
Here's another box top.
Does that make sense, Squirrel?
Garnish.
That would be garnish, dear boy. Do try it.
Garnish.
Excellently done.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
A box top.
Guess maybe in James I wasn't focusing on the judges them speaking against the law and judges it, which, like, of course, we don't want to judge them differently than how the law does. Yeah, I think what James is trying to say is that, like, when you're judging, you're trying to put yourself over and above the law. And so by doing so, you are inherently not keeping it.
Say, I was wondering...
What do we do when we see a door, young man?
Knock on it, I guess?
Hello, young man. What can we do for you today?
My name is Sam.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Sam. My name is Selma Celery, and this is my sister, Selena Celery. Hello.
Hello.
We teach dancing and etiquette here. What do you do?
Right now, I'm helping a carrot prevent a war by finding peace delegates and getting them to a big conference.
How delightful. Yes, war is always such a filthy business.
We need to remind the children what we're up to.
Hi, I'm Sam.
Oh, hi.
I see you've got a straw hat. Are you a delegate to the peace conference?
No, I'm the foreman here. I was supposed to give this hat to bean number 47, who is our delegate, but I can't.
Why not?
Because we don't know which bean is number 47. I was going to use the new BCS 4000 bean counter sorter, but I don't have the instruction manual, so I can't put it together.
That does sound like a problem.
It is. Oh dear, oh dear.
He's going to be 47 all along. I guess you're just worried about the trap people who like sin stuff do. He's quote Matthew 7 to say that they can do whatever they want and we can't be opposed to it. Which I thought by adding more context to it, understood how that passage didn't permit sin and allowed us to criticize it, but the gems they felt spoke stricter. Yeah. No, and I think let's kind of understand what it means to judge more fully, especially in sort of the Jewish context, I guess. And this is not, I am not an expert in this, for the record, but this is just my surmising and based on what I know. Like to judge, like when we say to judge, it's like, oh well, I think poorly of this person, you know. But I think perhaps the language that Christ was using and given the audience, there is a greater sense that to judge isn't just that sort of thing, but to hold them liable to a judgment, to be the judge. And Jesus is saying, like, look, you can't necessarily do that. And James is reinforcing that. And probably James is speaking to a community where there's probably some tension and some division going on and saying, look, gotta knock this out. That said, we can still make judgments, like we have the ability to make judgments as human beings to discern what's good and bad. So it's not that Jesus is saying don't determine that something is bad, it's just the way we go about doing it. Yeah, it's sort of a condemnation, not necessarily to any particular like metaphysical judge or metaphysical punishment, but to a reminder of the way that God's justice is present in that. But yeah, like, what does it mean to judge someone versus to judge someone's actions, I think is an important thing. And yeah, we don't look at Matthew 7 to say, oh, we can do whatever we want. In fact, Matthew 7 is challenging us to avoid a particular sin in judging others, and also being aware of our sins in general before what's the word I'm looking for? Condemning others. There's a difference. Logs and splinters, yeah, that's the passage from Matthew 7, and I think there is a difference between judging someone and like ostracizing them versus trying to help someone to see that something is not helping them and is objectively bad for them. So I think that is a difference as well as an important part of understanding that passage and what it means. Because no, the Bible doesn't have this silver bullet, we get to do whatever we want line. Sorry. Yeah, and fraternal, yeah, letting your brother know he's doing something wrong. There is such a thing as fraternal correction. We have that in our language, in the Catholic tradition, but it's precisely that. It's fraternal. It is done as a brother or a sister or someone close, someone familial, and also that it's a correction. It's not a condemnation of someone, but it's helping them to be their better selves. So, so I think that is a part of it too. So does that make more sense, Squirrel? Does that help sort of parse it out? That's a great question, by the way. But we do need to have, but I think Jesus' point in Matthew is very much we need to have humility when we are helping others, that we have to be self-penitential and admitting our own faults. Because, yeah, we've all encountered hypocrites in our lives. Odds are we have all been hypocritical at some point in our lives. And we're not proud of that. And we know that it's like, okay, no, if we are approaching this in more humility. So... constantly, oh no, not constantly, no. There's goodness. I hope not. Not intentionally, no. It rarely is, but... Matthew 7, James Schwartz are not talking as how he would understand it. Yeah, maybe a relevant apologetic passage might help. Judging is an action. Judging is to understand it in the modern sense. Dropping someone, just point to Matthew 7, silver bullet. Concupiscence. Yeah, that's a real thing. That is that. I don't have one off the top of my head. If someone else in chat does, please feel free to share it. But I think, yeah, you have to read it. I think that's an opportunity of reading it in the cultural context as well. And that, yeah, Scripture, as much as Scripture does speak to us today, and I do fully believe that, we are not in the same culture in which it is written, so we sometimes have to take that into consideration of, like, what is being said here. Hey, Tantalus. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything that would be, like, an answer, but basically just telling people, it's like, that's... I mean, quite frankly, it's ridiculous to say that it's like, oh, this passage means we get to do whatever we want. It's like, no. Literally, the whole context and narrative of Jesus' life is quite literally one calling people to repentance, dying on the cross and rising from the dead to be the paschal sign and the means by which we encounter God and are brought into union with God. Means many such cases people weaponizing as such. Well, I can't help it, but they're wrong. It's just one of those, like, you hear about it and you're like... And unfortunately, some people are going to weaponize such things, and even if we give them, like, a cogent argument and, like, history and context and support, they'll be like, ah. So...
BCS 4000. Boy, there are a lot of parts in there.
Gratuitous educational content.
It's a hopeless mess. And the instruction manual
It was
didn't
Pajama
come
Sam
with
where
it,
that came
so I've
from
got
originally.
no way at all of putting it together.
Maybe I could help you put this together. I like puzzles.
No, it's too complicated. We don't stand a chance without the manual.
Barlow's Bobby Hill. Like,
There
yeah.
sure are a lot of parts.
Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear.
I forget the name of the voice actress, but yep. Okay, so we need an instruction manual, which is probably the book we need from the library.
I could use a ride again.
Hop on.
Pamela Adlon. Yeah, I think the woman who did the voice of Sam also did some voices in Recess. Little blurbs.
Here's another box top.
Oh, that's uncomfortable. That just, oh.
You're certainly working hard.
Yep.
Here's another box top. You guys are all plumbers, right?
Right.
What's this?
Oh, that's just my old ski ticket. I heard it's self-service now. You can have it if you want.
What are these shapes marked on it?
That's the route I always take when I go skiing.
Oh.
That's what I needed. Secure judging is not a condemning way, neither necessarily a metaphysical way either, but in the same way we might judge a person, we might say we hate them or like reveling in that, in which case it's mortal sins. I don't know if I'd necessarily say automatically mortal sins. Again, mortal sin is more complicated than that, but yeah, no, I think it's a little both and sort of a thing where yes, we can try not to judge in the condemnation way, but also judge not in the sort of inner way. But ultimately, like, I do think it's at its heart, like, yeah, no, I think it is still inherently sinful, and I think there, you know, and Jesus does say, you know, if you call your brother Raka, idiot, like, so there is an element of the internal, but it's ultimately, there is a difference between making a statement against a person versus a statement against an action. And also to not put ourselves as...
Hey, that's a nice wrench.
Yep.
That's a Shaftsman High Tensile Monkey Man with 30 to 300 auto zoom and... Hey,
Where's
are
that
you in the
auto zoom?
union?
The union?
The plumbers union.
Let's see your plunger.
I haven't got a plunger.
Well, then don't touch the wrench. It's for trained
Billy
professionals.
Dark calls your
Okay.
judgment as more measure against standards. Yeah, and that can be tough. But yeah, it's...
These must be spare pipes just in case.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, Jesus isn't telling us to put our brains on a shelf and not use them, but... Yeah, and advising against hypocrisy. You know.
That's not gonna do me any good. I wonder what this does.
Just trying to put a bow on the takeaways. Yeah, no, and I think that's great. But yeah, that's a tricky one where it's like the language of what judgment
Oh,
is
good, another box
shifted,
top.
so. I wonder what this does. Has historically caused more problems, not less. I mean, yeah. Previous message field. Yeah, I think so. I think so. I'm trying to figure out which of these pieces, like, I see a piece.
I wonder if I could fix this. I need to find a spare that looks like the clogged one.
Oh, that's what I'm looking for. Okay.
I wonder what I can use to loosen these pipes and take them apart.
Yeah, exactly. Squirrel, I think that's a good way to look at it. I don't think it's that you didn't have it. So I need to be a member of the Plumbers Union. Oh. This screen gives me stomachache.
Sprinkle,
I'm
how
glad
about
it's
another
very good,
ride?
Sure, anytime.
Can you explain many times separately? I mean, that is the useful thing of a lectionary is that we get to hear readings every 3 years ago. Oh! You know,
Here's another
some
box
people will
stop.
hear a script they've heard how many times in their life and then hear it on a Sunday and go, oh! Oh, I get it in a new light. That's a great thing. Some people don't attend church. This is true. But for those that do. Where was the library? Well, I can go to the eyes, because I can be a gourd.
Look, a sweet potato.
Where?
Is that?
I don't see anybody.
Oh, hello, sir.
Welcome to the egg complex, Mr.
Gourd. Sam Gourd.
Mr. Gourd. Very good.
Oh, yes, that's very good.
I think I'll just go on in here now.
Hold it, that's the... Oh, wait a minute. It's gourds only, right?
Yes, and he's a gourd, so I guess that means,
That means we let him in.
aha!
Good job, guys. Good job. We figured it out.
This is more cramped than the hall closet of our house. I bet I could see all the way around the world with this thing. Hey, there's Chuck Cheddar and his balloon.
Oh! There it is, 6 pounds. So I need to lose 4 pounds in mine.
Neat. Look, a 40-foot marble.
What?
Over by that, what is that anyway?
This bag is pretty heavy with the sand in it. Here, maybe this bag of sand will help get you unstuck.
Ah, brilliant. Thank you. Well, I guess that was a little too heavy.
I'll go find it and try again.
Thanks, Sam.
Oh,
Okay, so we have a ski pass here.
these shapes show the route that plumber
Triangle,
took when he
circle,
went
triangle.
skiing.
Shapes and colors, chat. Shapes and colors.
Here I go! Woo! Yay! Whoop. Yay! Woo!
Those are barely even moguls. Sure, that's what I needed. The plunger.
All right, a plunger. I wonder how it got up there.
I would not put a plunger directly to my face.
How about another ride?
Sure, anytime.
So library must be... Hey, trouble you for one more question, of course.
There's 9 scoops. I have... There's... I have 6 scoops. I have 4 scoops in my bag.
Oh, I don't remember the beginning of that. So I'm afraid I don't know quite the reference.
Oh, hang on! This is a good one! Knock, knock!
Okay, no, this... The library had to be... Where was the library? I'm confused. No, it's been years since I've seen that movie. I do not really remember it. Unique theological takeaways from First Thessalonians. Ooh. Major theological takeaways of Thessalonians. Feel like I'm missing something. There's always like a lot of something. So I'm really bad at keeping track of the letters sometimes in that way. So let me grab actually my Letters of St. Paul notes. Munster loves the song. Ah, okay. Yeah, I was disappointed too, but okay, so I don't have my notes, but I have my Bible because I looked at my pile of notebooks and went, I don't have time to look for this. I seem to recall, and if Trekkie, if you're still there, you can probably jump in and help on this one. Is Thessalonians concerned about death? Okay, so the summary here in this Bible says the major theme is a holy life leads to eternal life. Paul calls believers to holiness, with particular call to continue as examples to others, walk worthy of God's calling, stand fast in the faith, and maintain moral purity. The letter closes with instruction and comfort concerning the second coming, and other exhortations concerning the spiritual life. So yeah, a lot of Thessalonians just has to is that reminder of endurance in holiness. I think And a sense of those who see, but don't many other letters cover the same similar shows. I mean, Paul had common themes. Paul was Paul. But in particular, yeah, so one thing is that, like, in chapter 4, he mentions Macedonia. He loved Macedonia. But he's dealing with, like, social tensions of converts from pagan worship to Christianity now being persecuted by their former pagans. What was my homily about today? Exclamation mark ROTD. I will get to that in a moment. Just the rotata. But so just that general sense. And sorry, I'm trying to find, like, a particular line in here. Is it in Second Thessalonians? There's either a very particular line in this letter that I'm thinking of, or I'm thinking of another letter altogether, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. There we go. It is. Okay, so 4:14. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. So part of what the Thessalonians are concerned about is this sense of, like, well, we've been living holy lives and we're dying. What about this whole resurrection business? What about this whole, new world? And so Paul's kind of reminding them and teaching them of this more nuanced understanding of, like, look, it's not guaranteed to happen in your lifetime, but that's not a reason to not be holy. I knew it was in there. I just had to find it. Makes sense as well. You have to tread similar ground. Yeah, I mean, he's preaching to the Gentiles, and so there's going to be broad swaths. The certain questions are going to come up, like circumcision repeatedly, and so yeah, like Isaiah and 2 Kings having identical portions. Yeah, it makes it. It can, especially if you try to read it all like if you're reading all of Paul's letters in, like, a single day. Whew, my head would be spinning. Anyway. But yeah, so, like, death and resurrection and the concern over that and, like, what that meant in terms of living holiness and, like, why are we doing this? I want to find that line, though, to reaffirm that is the one I was thinking of. But anyway, for the Rotata, well, as we're getting very close to Christmas time now, we're getting all the classic Matthew and Luke pre-nativity story stuff, and today is the angel appearing to Joseph, and I love Joseph's response to the angel because it's a joke because Joseph doesn't say anything. But no, I mean, it is, like, we have these readings as a very intentional time of, like, we're getting ready to celebrate Christmas, and we're sort of reenacting the story in a certain sense through the use of scripture to prepare our hearts for it and put ourselves in the shoes of the people who were there. But it is also a great story of obedience and having a heart open to change. That he had a plan, and God's like, time out, hold on, different plan. Not your plan. And he goes with it.
Here's a photo of me.
Now I can make you a library card.
Well, that was efficient. Okay, so I'm looking for, like, a Probably this book. I have the card.
Excuse me, young man.
Yes?
If you want to take that book with you, you'll have to check it out.
Oh, okay. Can I use this card now?
Yes, you can. You may keep the book for 3 weeks. After that, the fine is $400 a day.
That seems like kind of
Bougie,
a lot.
library. Hey,
Just
Will
get
Pog,
them
thank you on
back in
Invaders.
3
Hope you're doing well. Welcome. My
Okay,
name is Father
thank
Evan,
you.
Catholic priest,
You're
streaming here on Twitch
welcome.
4 days a week, looking at the intersection of faith and gaming, taking questions of faith. We are currently playing Pajama Sam. It's become a tradition to play humongous entertainment games during December, just for some fun nostalgia. So welcome. You got PTSD flashbacks in the right sound. Isn't it great? Anyway, we did not want you to be unaware, brothers. Yeah, that's the exactly the passage I had in mind. Especially 4:14 there. For if we believe through Jesus, bring with him those who have fallen asleep. Like there's this. Hey, no, thank you for putting it in chat. Gives other people an opportunity to read it as well. But yeah, that's an important part, and it's a genuine concern. Like, hey, Paul, we are literally dying. What gives?
Here, maybe this will be the right amount of weight.
All right, let's give her a whirl. It's working!
Yay!
Thanks, kid, you're a genius. I am off to the peace conference.
Good luck! Well, that's 1 down, 3 to go.
Bye, Mr. Chatter. I'm gonna zip through some of these screen transitions. Behold the giant heart. It's terrifying. Guess let's go this way. Try and ignore that screen. I am a plumber.
Hey, I've got a plunger just like yours.
It's like that bit from
Except
Psychonauts.
A plunger, huh? Well, you must be a plumber then if you got that. Hey, guys, look at this fella's plunger.
Yeah, that's a real nice plunger. Real nice.
Always nice to meet a fellow plumber. Folks call me Scissors. This is paper. And that's rock over there.
What?
I'm Pajama Sam.
It's a pleasure, Sam.
Likewise.
Why does this passage imply we don't go to heaven
Anything you
more or less
need,
immediately
you
after death?
just ask.
We gotta
Do
wait
you
a while.
think I could try
Because
out
the
that
concept
really big
of
plunger?
heaven
Oh, well, now
as
you
we have
see,
it now with
this
like
is an
communion and
extra
saints
special
wasn't a
mega
fully developed
plunger with a
doctrine at the time.
telescoping handle. Great
there
for
still
reaching
is-
clogs normal
and remember,
plungers can't.
Paul is
I need it right now
still
because I'm
operating out of
working
his
on a real
inherently
big clog.
Jewish
But
background.
maybe after
And there's
I'm
this sense of
through, I might
sleeping.
let
We
you
actually
try
see
it.
this idea.
Okay, thanks.
I have no idea what they said, but I imagine it's take the thing.
Do you think I could use
We
that
actually
wrench
see
for
the
a while?
idea
Sure, Sam.
stands
Yes, we're all
still kind of hold
plumbers
this
here.
idea of like sleeping in the Lord up through about the 3rd century in some parts of the church. Offerhat, who was a priest, was he even a priest? I forget. He was a theologian for sure. But he was in Syria, but he was beyond the borders of the empire. So he represents a very Semitic Semitic theological style. And he argued this sense of our souls will be imbued into our bodies, and we will sleep. It's not the same. It's not the same as going to Sheol. It's not a condemnation, but we'll be kind of sleeping in our bodies, and the spirit will go and testify on our behalf before the throne of God. And when the end comes and we are raised, the spirit will have already testified for us. Now, this is not what the church teach. I do not want to say this is what the church believes, but it is what an early Christian theologian argued for, and shows sort of a root of the what do we understand as going to heaven and falling asleep versus death. And I think that's part of it too, is that Paul is using death as a euphemism for death in a very intentional way, but also a way of saying it's not the same as full death, because it's not death of the soul. It's not this person ceases to exist. It's not this person's condemned to hell. It's different than that. And so he's trying to put that into language and into words. And so, but we have developed our theology of what it means to go to heaven and purgatory vis-a-vis the personal judgment and the final judgment. And so that's an example of the church growing in an understanding over time through the work of the Spirit, if that makes sense.
These must be spare pipes just in case.
We go up relative. Yeah, so what we do believe in, we do have there's another term for it, like personal judgment. There's another term for it that I think gets used more often. But anyway, when we die, we do believe that we will go and we will immediately be before the judgment seat of God. And from there, we will go to heaven, hell, purgatory, as spirit. And then in the resurrection, we can go to, we will be, the fullness of judgment will be brought about, and we will be brought to the heaven or hell according to the judgment. Hopefully the heaven. You know, and it's hard to talk about because the whole concept of heaven is beyond time, because it's God's presence.
Boy, I better find a way to turn
So,
off
like, to
the
talk about
water
before,
I
after,
take the pipe off.
it gets tricky. Yeah, time. Oh, I thought I delayed it.
That looks like a perfect fit. There, that should do it.
Aha! I've got it! Now I can finally relax. So guys, what's up?
We were just talking about rubber gaskets.
Oh boy!
It's working fine now.
Head over. Yeah, so heaven being in the presence of God, it's hard to talk about time in relationship to heaven, so that's why it's hard to say, like, immediately or it's as
Come on,
immediate as
Sprinkle, let's
we
go.
perceive it.
Okay.
But yeah, at the time of our death, we have the particular judgment. That's the word I was looking for, particular judgment, and then there's the final judgment. And yeah, we'll apologize. I imagine Cardinal Dolan was trending on Twitter today. Because we got the confirmation of the news that everyone has known for a week. That Bishop Hicks, from currently, or who was Bishop of Joliet, will be made Bishop of New York, February 6th. So technically right now we don't have an Archbishop in New York. We have... Cardinal Dolan is staying on as the Apostolic Administrator for the 2 months. Month and a half.
Look, I've got
But then he'll be retiring to the somewhere in the city.
Oh. It's the BCS 4000 Operator's Guide by Dr. Gizmo
Hey, I'm glad.
Sprouts be praised. We can put the machine together. Quick.
Babbling your prompts, lots of questions. That's
Take an
great.
end.
Questions are a fantastic thing. It's how we learn.
That ought to just about do it.
Thanks for all your help, Sam. Hey, what do you say? Shall we fire it up? I'll let you do the honors.
Sure.
All beans to the counting and sorting machine.
I can use this machine to sort the beans and find number 47. The kidney beans go on one side, and the jelly beans go on the other.
Wow, they do not give you a lot of time to react. But I basically have it set up so no matter what, a jelly or a kidney bean's gonna go to the right. I'm gonna go up to 47 with this. This is ridiculous. Hey, this Catholic, how you doing? Good to see you, Sean. Oh, get over it. No, whoops. I guess ultimately all you have to do is just set up everything to go down the middle here. Like, it's a binary sorter. Like, I only need one thing to shift them. Busy putting the next show. Hey, that's fun. That's funny and good for you is that you don't have to actually get the correct count. You just need 47. Yeah, this is true. It's just tedious. Like, if it was 21, I'd be like, oh, okay, but 47 is like, oh. Gotta pad that game time. That's so true. You need this busy box to last a while. Keep your kids entertained. There he is. There's 47. Agent 47.
Oh boy, it's me! I'm number 47!
No.
Well, it looks like you're being number 47. So you've got to represent us at the peace conference.
It's a great honor!
You better take this hat, in case there's any confusion.
Thank you, Foreman! I'll be on my way immediately.
That's 2 down, 2 to go.
Good work, Sam.
Sounds like
And
Bob the Tomato.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Probably isn't, but kind of does, yeah. Hat doesn't fit the bean. Oh, well, you know. So,
That's Granny Smythe. I don't think I found her yet.
and then the baguette, we need to get the guys on the beach exercising. Kind of curvity. Yeah, a little bit. Have you seen
Hello,
Granny
young
Smythe?
man. How may we help you?
Have you seen anyone around here with a straw hat?
A straw hat? I think maybe one of those beans at the construction site had one. Don't you, Selma? Yes, perhaps. But I do try not to think about those uncouth legumes. They make such a racket.
Well, okay, well, we already knew that, though.
I could use a ride again. Hop.
I'm gonna hit these guys
That
with a
wouldn't
mallet.
be very nice.
Meep. Just
It's a
hanging out
good
inside.
thing there are some cupcakes here for you to draw, isn't it?
I don't know what we'd do if they weren't around.
Well, there's always the exercise machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How will you know when you're done baking?
Like we use a timer, you know?
PTH will be totally over when the bell rings.
Ring a bell. Okay, well.
I'd better not monkey with that. It looks complicated.
I haven't seen a bell anywhere. Wait, I have seen a bell somewhere.
I wish the bell wasn't so high up. Do you like selling balloons?
Oh, yeah. It's the fulfillment of all my hopes and dreams.
Really?
Say, those are nice. Oops.
Darn these laces, they're always coming undone. Here, kid, hold these for me, would you?
Okay. Whoops.
Bye!
Thanks, kid.
You're welcome.
Gotta undo those again. Yeah, I hope today's homily was,
Oh, not again. Here, kid, hold these for me, would you?
we
Pajama
are hearing sort of the
Sam
passages
always
leading up to the
opposes
nativity
me.
story. Today is Matthew and the story of
There's the bell.
We're
Matthew
done,
hearing
girls.
the
Peak
words of the
counting
angel
hours
and
are
needing some
over.
correction in a second visit.
Bye-bye, boys. Let's
But
go get
he
some
does
frozen
so in
yogurt.
profound
Aw.
silence and great
Darn.
obedience, and gives
I
us a
hope
model
they
that
come back
it's
tomorrow.
okay to make a plan,
What
but
will
also
we
to
do
be
until
open that
then?
God will
Work out some more. What else?
Yeah.
All right.
and sometimes surprise us and change our course.
Qu'est-ce que c'est? The wheel, it turns. I am saved!
Help?
Courage, mon ami! You must grab onto the wheel!
There's a lot happening.
Zoot! Ah, excellent! Now we are both saved, and I can continue on to the Conference of Peace.
Say, what happened to my... Oh, shoot. Oh, well, I needed a new career anyhow.
Perhaps you can start the taxi service. I need to go to the food pyramid. Can you take me there?
Sure, hop in.
Au
Does the
revoir,
exercises
my
have different
pajama
readings?
friend.
It shouldn't. The lectionary is... I mean, there might be individual cases where, like,
Au revoir.
a saint may be held in
That's
higher
3
regard
down,
in a particular
only
diocese.
1 more to go.
But for the most part, they should be of the same, because the lectionary is universal.
Yeah, this is my knock.
Who's there?
Lettuce.
Lettuce who?
Let us in. It's freezing out.
I have a feeling he's a delegate in one variant. Where's Granny Smythe?
Come on.
Also, it's very classy that her name is Smythe.
Welcome to the Blubbers.
Oh, there's a door that way. Oh, she's not having a good time.
Hello, I'm Pajama Sam. Are you one of the delegates to the peace conference?
That's right! I'm Granny Smythe! That's Smythe with a Y, mind you! Get it right!
Yes, ma'am. Do you need help?
She's
You
salty
bet
too.
your flannel pajamas I do, Sonny! I'm stuck out here, and I don't swim!
Never fear, Sam is here. I'll find a way to get to you.
Make it snappy, would you? I'm late for the conference!
Pajama Sam is voiced by Pamela Adlon. Voice of Bobby Hill from King on the Hill. Did a voice in Recess, I think. That's done a lot of voicing. This is the worst game of Frogger ever.
How did you get trapped out there, Granny Smythe?
It was those sweets! I told them to stop roughhousing, and they picked me up and put me out here!
I wonder if I can get a longer one of these.
Can I trade you?
If you're not using that big plunger right now, would you like to trade me for a while?
Why, sure, I guess that'd be alright.
Friendly reminder, this game started with a piece of broccoli telling me, or asking me, are you a political prisoner too?
Oops, sorry.
That's okay, Sam.
I was there.
I've been working with rock for years, so I'm used to
I just
it.
wanted to make reshare that for those who weren't there, and also to make sure it wasn't a fever dream on my end. Oh, the timing on this is abysmal.
I wonder how the carrot is doing with that crazy general.
Yeah, a little plumber's crack going on.
Oh my, what's this?
Hang on,
This feels like a
Granny
plunger that
Smythe.
Roger Wilco would use.
Oh dear! I can't swim!
I do declare.
I guess it wasn't so deep after all.
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine. And
Why are those
thank
walnuts
you
being
very
jerks to you,
much
though?
For rescuing me. You're a delightful young man.
Thank you.
Now I must be rushing along to the conference. They'll be waiting for me. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. I think that's all the delegates.
Yeah,
I'd better
it's busy
get
time,
to the
but
food pyramid myself
I'm lucky. I actually get
to make
to
sure
take it
everything
off this
goes
year. I'm going home
okay.
for Christmas, so.
I'm telling you, meals should consist strictly of dairy products, for health reasons.
But it is the breads which are the most healthy of food.
You take care of this
Hi,
guy. Good to see
everybody.
ya.
How's it going?
Have a Merry
Krusty
Christmas.
here thinks he's healthier
Hey,
than I
Shadowvision.
am.
This cheese has gone rancid. I cannot negotiate with him.
Uh-oh.
You're both fools. The bean way is the only way.
Nonsense! Fruits are the principal staple for meals and dessert.
What do you know, you old crabapple?
A lot more than you overgrown lump of mold.
Please, let's not resort to name-calling.
Who made you the boss, you wilted weed?
Flathead!
Shrub.
Entree. Loaf.
Pabulum.
Grub.
Morsel.
Gobbet.
Tidbit.
Stop!
What's going on in here? I thought I heard shouting. This means war!
No, it doesn't. You're all being silly fighting like this. If there's one thing I've learned since I've been here, it's that no food is an island.
What?
What are you talking about?
It's right. It's hard to eat an island.
You two are arguing about whether cheese or bread is better, but it takes cheese and bread to make a cheese sandwich, which is maybe the most perfect food there is.
What?
And neither of you could do it without the other.
Why would you say a grilled cheese? At least I could buy a
Hey, Brian.
grilled cheese.
Cheese sandwich.
And there's other stuff too. What about peanut butter and jelly? Or macaroni and cheese? Or peaches and cream? All the best things to eat are made by different kinds of food working together. And that's what you should all be doing. Instead of fighting, you can work together to create new and better things.
New?
Better?
Sure, like maybe an apple, broccoli, bean, cheese, and lollipop sandwich.
The kid's got a point.
We have been most foolish.
Put her there, partner.
All right. Yeah. Let's do it.
Cooperation? Why this
No, I
means...
think the food here wants to be
means,
eaten. I think it's teleology.
Peace, General. Peace.
Exactly. In that case, I hereby officially and irrevocably declare... peace.
Or...
Great speech, Sam. You really saved the day with that one.
I'm glad I could help.
Can you stick around to help us make plans for the future? Or have you got to get home for dinner?
Dinner? Oh my gosh, I forgot.
Well, that was an experience. You didn't imagine a deep teleology Pajama Sam game. I didn't expect the communist carrot to make a reappearance. In fact, I didn't imagine most of this. What happened to the sweets? Great question. Apparently, their representative, the lollipop, was like, "Ah, guys, knock it off." They all lived happily ever after, and we learned nothing about good eating because it didn't teach us anything about moderation and a balanced diet. All right. My brain is cooked now with that weirdness. I love playing these games, though. They're so delightfully weird. But that is where we're going to call it for the day. Sam's eating ice cream on his eggs. I didn't want to notice that. Eggs a la mode. Why not? Why not? But anyway, yeah, thank you to everyone who's liked, followed, subscribed. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Let Us Play. I've been your host, Father Evan. It's been good to be with y'all today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Imagine working that. I think I'd be banned from all the diners, which is a lot here in New York and New Jersey. Next stream is Monday. We'll have a stream on Monday. That'll be the only stream for the week. Don't know what we're going to do. We might do Kingdom Hearts just because it's Monday, but we might also do something different for fun for Christmas. And then I'll be back on the 30th. So yeah. And then yeah, I think this is so. Thank you to everyone who's liked, followed, subscribed, given bits, all that good jazz. Thank you for checking out the YouTube and the Discord. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. If I don't see you, I hope you have a wonderful and Merry Christmas. And let's see who's live that we can raid into. We haven't raided Yuha in a while, so let's go raid Yuha. Raid call is Father Raid, as usual. Go give Yuha some love. And again, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care. God bless.